Let's pray tonight. Father, we love you tonight, and we're going to be reading and hearing and learning in your word, and we ask that you be our guide, because you are the one that we love, you are the one that we follow, you are the one that we obey, and we know that you're the one that loves us. In Yeshua's name, amen. All right, we're going to learn two new letters tonight, Hebrew letters, and we're going to learn them in Hebrew, like modern biblical Hebrew, and then we're going to learn them in the ancient language, okay? This letter looks something like this, okay, is a letter Mem. Mem. Say that. Mem. And what sound does it make? M. Just like the letter M. Thank you very much. Just like the letter M. M. Now, remember there was another letter that we learned about this. Mem is a very unusual letter in that only at the end of a word it looks like this. Okay? It's a little bit different. At the end of the word, it looks like that. Anywhere else, it looks like this. Okay? And as you begin to read Hebrew, you'll be looking at letters and you go, what in the world is that? I don't know what that letter is. Just remember, there are those letters at the end that don't always look like they do in the rest of the sentence or the rest of the words. So mem is like that. Now, in the ancient language, it looks like waves of water. And it means water or chaos, because the ocean, the deep in the ocean, there's waves there and it's chaotic. Or it means mighty, or it even means blood. And the reason it means blood is blood flows like water. Okay? That's the mem. The next letter is the letter Nun, okay, which looks about like that. And it's the N, all right, which is nice because you have M-N, Mem, Nun, right? But we know that English goes all the way back to Hebrew. So you'll have those familiarities. Now, in the ancient language, this letter looks like something like that, okay? And what it's meant to be is a seed. See how that can look like a seed? Or it might look like a sperm, which it's meant to be, okay? That's what the word means. The letter Nun means seed or generations or continue or son, okay? So that's that letter. Now, there's a word that is a Nun, okay? Then an Aleph. You know Aleph, that's the first letter that we learned, and a Mem. So if that's that final Mem, it's going to look like that. Okay, now, you know all of these letters. You know the Nun, you know the Aleph, and you know the Mem, okay? There's no vowels in it right now, so ignore the vowels. And how would you pronounce that word? Take a guess. What? Nam. Okay? Naum. All right? Now, the word is nam, and it means declare, like a word, like a prophet. Okay? So Now you know a little bit more Hebrew. So we're ready to jump in. Go ahead. Okay, there are levels of reading in Hebrew. There's the reading where you're reading and you're getting the narrative, you're getting the idea, you're getting the meanings of the words you're reading. Okay, but then if you want to go a little bit below the surface of that reading, then you begin to look at the word, and you begin to make other words out of the word that you have. Okay, we do this in English with, what is the name of that? It's not an anagram, is it? Anagram. Where you have a word and then you can make other words out of the letters in that word. Okay, they do that in Hebrew. And they look at the numbers of the letters and add them up. They do that in Hebrew. But going back to the ancient language, what we're doing is we're realizing that this ancient Hebrews were people that lived off the land, and their language and everything about their language was about the life that they led all around them. So you have words like the word tomorrow? No, future. Okay, it's a word that means look behind you. Okay, now that doesn't make sense in English. Why would it mean that? Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. Look behind you? Why would you look behind you to know your future? Well, because you know your future by looking at where you've been. Okay, so you've been there and you're going in that direction, so it goes on and on. But yeah, you know, to get to where you're going to be reading it, and whenever you read any of the words, you're going to know all of the meanings of the letters and everything. You know, you'd be one heaven of a rabbi to be able to do that. Let me put it like that. So, all right, let's dig into the reading for tonight, which is Vayetzev, which means he went out, which is how it begins. Then Jacob went out. Okay, so we're going to begin in Genesis 28. Then Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. Okay, so right now in your minds, you ought to be hearing where that already happened more than once. It's not like this. Like you're reading this and you're going, wow, somebody's going up north to Haran in order to get a wife. Just like his dad, except not exactly. Because when Isaac went to get his wife, Isaac didn't go, right? It was Eliezer, we believe, okay, who was the servant of Abraham. But he was more like his administrator. Okay, he was very high up. So anyway, so that's what now Jacob is going up to Haran. And he happened upon a certain place. Keep those words in mind. And he spent the night there. The sun had set. He took one of the stones from the place and put it by his head and lay down in that place. Some translations, it's under his head. Some translations, it's by his head. I don't know about putting a rock under my head. Maybe putting one by my head. Now, this is something that I learned this week that I didn't know. The word that we have as place in Hebrew is makom, which means a place or an area or the ground, but it is a Hebrew word for God. Ha makom, meaning the place. Isn't that interesting? Okay. This is used in mourning situations. They use those words, ha makom, may ha makom be with you and bless you. Okay? There's a lot going on in Genesis 28. There's a lot. Okay? Now, you already know, maybe you remember, that Beersheba is literally well of 7, because I guess there were 7 wells in that area. Okay? Well of the 7. Now, you know that number is very meaningful. It is like God's number. It's the number of days, okay? It's the number of lights on a menorah. So it's a very, very important number. And to have this well being the well of the 7 is indicative that where this well is, the land of Israel, that Israel was going to be a wellspring for the world. Okay, ultimately they're going to be a light unto the nations. That was the whole reason they were brought together. Okay? And now we keep reading, and we read that he had a dream. He dreamed. All of a sudden, there was a stairway or ladder set up on the earth, and its top reaching into the heavens. And behold, angels of God going up and down on it. And surprisingly, Adonai was standing on top of it. And he said, I am Adonai, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you and to your seed. Okay, your offspring, your Zerah. So what is going on here? Jacob is having one wail of a dream. This is a dream that is an open heaven dream. It's like, who else in the Bible do you know of that had an open heaven dream? Who? Yeah, the book of Revelation, John. Yeah, that's the one I think of. Peter had one in the book of Acts. There is, if you need it. She's not in there? Then she's going to be up Freedom Night. Yep. Sorry about that. Okay, so I think of John and his vision of heaven, and heaven being open. Well, here in Genesis, we have somebody having this dream, this vision in a dream. Now, where we read Adonai was standing on top of it doesn't only have to be translated that way. It can also be Adonai was standing right beside him. Sometimes the Hebrew words that you use as prepositions can mean more than one thing. In, by, on, things like that. Okay? So the heavenly vision of the ladder is where the promise of Yehovah given to Abraham is now going to be given to Jacob. Okay? And this vision, this dream, this ladder was mentioned in the Gospels by Yeshua. Do you remember where? John 1. Okay, in John 1, Yeshua has just met Nathanael. Okay, Philip's brother. I think he's Philip's brother, right? Okay, and here's what happens in John 1, starting at verse 46. By the way, Philip lets Nathanael know that Yeshua is from Nazareth. And Nathanael says, Nazareth, can anything good come from there? Okay, and Philip said to him, that's his brother, come and see, which are great evangelism words. Right? What? Come on. Come with me. I'll show you. Yeshua saw Nathanael coming toward him. And he said, look, a true Israelite. There's nothing false in him. Usually in English, it's there's one that has no guile, right? No falseness in him. Okay? And Yeshua answered, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Now, we could go way into that and what that means, okay? That's in the Tanakh. The idea of every man being under his own fig tree and studying Torah. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And so when he hears those words, Nathanael answers, Rabbi, you are Ben Elohim. You are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Now, why would he say that? You know, why would those words make Nathanael go, you know that? Because the idea is Yeshua knew exactly what he was doing when he was under the fig tree. He was reading about Messiah. Okay? And then Yeshua says, because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree, you're amazed? Okay? And then he says, you're going to see greater things than that. Amen, amen. Okay? Amen, amen, amen. Which is truth, truth. All right? You will see heaven opened and the angels of God going up and coming down on the Son of Man. So what was he doing there? He was letting Nathanael know, and everybody else who could hear him, who knew what happened to Jacob, knew about the ladder, knew all about that. He was letting him know, by the way, I'm the guy who was right there. I am Bethel. I am the house of God. I am the ladder. All of that is me. Okay, so right in John 1, people say that Jesus didn't reveal who he was. And I'm like, oh yeah, he did. He did it a lot, okay? But you don't know it unless you know a little bit about what's going on in between the lines. So now, God, Yehovah, said these words to Jacob. I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. I am Yehovah. I am Adonai, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. What is he doing there? He's letting him know you're next. Okay? He was mine, and he was mine, and now you're going to be mine. And the reason is there is a promise that is handed down from Abraham that we read about in Genesis 12 and is handed all the way down to Yeshua. But there's something else. There's a seed. That is the seed of Messiah that's going to travel from Abraham all the way to Miriam. Right? Okay, so all of that is in these words, I am Adonai, Elohim of your father, Abraham, and the God of Isaac. By the way, father and grandfather can be one word in Hebrew. Okay. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you and your seed. And your seed will be as dust of the land, and you will burst forth to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. south, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed, and in your seed. Okay? And all the families of the earth will be blessed. Read, all of the families of the earth will bless themselves. That gives you the idea that whatever this blessing is, it isn't automatic. Okay? It's something that you got to engage in if you want the blessing. Now, what's going to happen as we read on in the Torah is we're going to learn over and over again that anyone could be an Israelite. Foreigner could be an Israelite. Okay? Anyone. The door's wide open. So sometimes people say Jesus threw the door wide open. It's like, well, the door was always wide open. They didn't always know it. We didn't always know it. All right? But the door is always wide open. What did you have to do in order to be an Israelite? What was that? Circumcision. But remember, of the flesh mattered, okay, but what really mattered was of the heart. And if you have it of the heart, then you're going to want to keep his ways, right? And this is how you got to become an Israelite. Okay, there's a little more, but okay, this seed that was promised to Abraham, okay, was, number one, many children. You can get that out of that word, and that's actually one of the promises that he made. I'm going to make them like dust of the earth. But it's also the Messiah, okay, who would come out of Abraham's descendants and bring the offer of the blessing to anybody, to all families. Okay? In Galatians, Paul makes a midrash about this when he uses the words, and he writes the words, now the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. It doesn't say, and seeds as of many, but as of one, and to your seed, who is the Messiah, or who is Christ. How many of you have heard that from Galatians? And the argument goes on in Galatians, okay? But if you don't realize that he is a Jew and he's making a midrash, then you're going to go into Galatians and you're going to make it mean something it doesn't mean. Okay? So the more you learn Torah, the more you're going to know the meaning of the letters in the New Testament. Okay? So now Jacob wakes up. Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, undoubtedly, Adonai is in this place, and I was unaware. So he was afraid. He said, how fearsome or awesome this place is. This is none other than the house of God. This must be the gate of heaven. I was unaware is a Hebrew idiom meaning I was asleep. Okay? So I was asleep. But this idea of the house of God, the gate of heaven, what does that bring to your mind? Does it bring to your mind maybe a movie or whatever, an idea? Gate of heaven. Yeah. Okay. I remember those movies. There's more than one of them where there's like an opening. Yeah, Stargate. It's like there's an opening. There's a portal. And when you go in it, you're like in another world. Or it's like Narnia. Have any of you ever read Narnia? About the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the little girl walks into the wardrobe and she's out there. It's that world. But in here, it's another world. That's what's going on all around Jacob. He's been given this vision, and he realizes that heaven, if you will, is not a million miles away. Heaven is right here, okay, available, if you will, right here, invisible, normally invisible, okay? But right here. And there's angels going up and down. What are they doing? Going up and down. What do angels do? What is their job? Messengers and ministers. Okay? In other words, they bring messages and they help. How do they help? I don't even know. The warriors to help. Yeah, I mean to guard. And so you read about an angel in Daniel, right? There's an angel in Daniel. That isn't a little wee, figurine angel in the book of Daniel. So, if it was, then why is it whenever an angel is revealed in the Bible, what are the first words out of the angel's mouth? Yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's only me, an angel from heaven. Okay, this is the first reference in Torah of the house of God. Beit El, the house of God. Where we're reading about it tonight, it is like a house that exists in a heavenly realm. But later on, Yahovah is going to ask Moses and Israel to build a house, okay, or a model of a house on the earth. And what is that? The Tabernacle, the Mishkan, which, by the way, is designed to be portable as they're going through the desert. Okay, so, such amazingly beautiful ideas that are here. And as this tabernacle will be built later, and later it'll be built by Solomon, but it won't be portable anymore. But even that one is it isn't the real one. It's a model. Right? Where's the real one? It's in the heavens. And where's the heavens? Yes. We are a temple, the house of God. Okay? So all of that is in this vision. It's an amazing vision. So early in the morning, Jacob got up and he took the stone which had been by his head and he set it up as a memorial stone, and he poured oil on it. And he named that place Beit El, though originally its name was Luz. Okay, now what is this? What is it when you take oil and you pour it on something? What are you doing? You're anointing it. And what is the Hebrew word anoint or anointed? Mashiach. All right? You get it? He's pouring the oil on the rock. We're looking at this from, 40,000 feet up and 3,800 years later. We're looking at this, but we're able to get the whole picture. Jacob didn't have the whole picture. He had his picture of what he was looking at right here. And he anointed a rock. Okay? The anointed one is Mashiach, who is the rock. Yeah. And there's a rock that's going to turn up in Moses' days that goes with them. Okay? So all of these ideas are related. When you read something in the Bible, in the Torah, when you read something and even a word reminds you of another word somewhere else in the Bible, go there. Okay? It's all connected in a great and beautiful way. Similes. Yeah, sure. Yes. Okay, reading on. Then Jacob made a vow, saying this, if Elohim will be with me and watch over me on this way that I am going, and provide me food to eat and clothes to wear, and I return in shalom to my father's house, then Adonai will be my God. And this stone which I set up as a memorial will become God's house. And everything you provide me, I will definitely give a tenth of it to you. Okay, couple things about this. One, he's asking that this Elohim watch over him on the way to Derek, the way that he is going. He's going on a journey. He wants Elohim to be with him on the journey and do what? Provide me food to eat and clothes to wear. Where else have you heard that? Okay, Matthew, don't worry about what you're going to eat or what you're going to wear, okay? All of these things will be added unto you if you seek my kingdom and my righteousness. And earlier than that, in Exodus, they leave Egypt. They wander in the desert. They wander in the wilderness, in Numbers. And when you get to Deuteronomy, Moses reminds them, by the way, did you notice you always had enough to eat and you always had clothes on your back? They didn't even wear out. Even your shoes didn't wear out. So you have it here in Jacob's vow, and then you have it again in the Exodus, and then you have it again in Yeshua, reminding his own followers, look, God's going to handle it. Don't worry about it. God's going to handle it. Now, there's something else. I used to read this vow, these words of Jacob when I was growing up. And you know, if you grow up in a religious environment at all, you look at things religiously, like, gosh, can I really look at this honestly? Or do I have to look at it like, it's Jacob, he's making a vow. Look, it's Jacob going, look, I don't know if I all the way believe in you yet. But if you'll do this for me, then you got me, okay? It's a vow that looks like it's a bargain. Now, do you know anything from what we've read in Genesis yet? Do you know that Abraham and the people of the day, were they bargainers? Oh, yeah. Remember Abraham bartering for the grave and the sons of Het, and they were like, what is 400 shekels? And Abraham's like, sold. Sign the document, because now it's mine, all right? They're good. And so Jacob is just, carrying on with the idea of, I don't know yet. So something else to notice is that Jacob is leaving his house, his home. Okay, his dad never did. Or Isaac never left the land. Okay, Jacob is going to leave the land. And he's going to leave behind, for a little while, at least a moderately dysfunctional environment. Right? Okay? But remember that even though Yehovah is the God of Abraham and Isaac, Yehovah is not yet the God of Jacob. Not because he doesn't want to be or he's not there. He's going to be there because he promised he would, but Jacob hasn't done it yet. Okay? Which should let us know that all the way back in the beginning, if you want to follow God, you got to do something. Right? It's not all on him. And every one of us has to do that. I'm not able to lean on my dad's beliefs and go, well, you know what, my dad, he was, yeah, but what about you? Right? What about you? I remember when Jesus made the statement at the end of John, I think it is, Peter is worried about one of the other disciples, John, and he makes a statement about him, and Yeshua looks at him and he goes, basically, That is none of your business. Never mind. You follow me. Right? So that's kind of where we're going with this, is the Torah is letting us know that Jacob was at the beginning of a journey. Now, at the beginning of a journey, have any of you ever done this? Made a deal with God? Am I the only one that ever did this? Huh? There was a movie out many years ago, and it was Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise. Have you ever heard of those guys? The name of the movie was The End. And Burt Reynolds was wanting to die, and so he was doing his best to do away with himself. And whenever he did, he blundered it, and it didn't work. Finally, at the end of the movie, he goes out in the ocean, and he's like, all right, this is it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to swim out a mile or whatever till I lose all my energy, and then I'll be done. Well, he goes out there, and suddenly he's getting all these images of he doesn't want to die. Like he's remembering people in his life and stuff like that. So he's like, he gets out there, and he's treading water, and he goes, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. So he starts swimming back, but he's like running out of gas because he's been out there so long. And so he goes, God, I know that you've never heard from me, but if you're up there, I'm just asking, help me make it back. If you help me make it back, I will give you 90% of everything I own. Yeah, it's a really funny movie. Anyway, he gets a little bit more back, like halfway from there back, and he's still swimming, and he's still struggling. And he goes, God, if you help me get back, I will definitely give you 40% of everything I own. Right? And then he, as he gets nearer, the number keeps going down and down, and you're like, oh, that's a little bit like us sometimes, isn't it? You know, God, if you'll just do this, I will never. You make this vow, and they don't always work out very well, do they? Okay? Well, Jacob makes this vow, and you know what? God's going to be with him. He's going to be with him. He says, I'll give you a tenth. Okay, now that was mentioned back with Abraham and Melchizedek. All right, and now that amount is mentioned again. Okay, so then Jacob got on his feet and went to the land of the peoples of the east. When he looked, suddenly there was a well in the field, and there were 3 herds of sheep resting by it. From that well, they would water the flocks, and the stone on the mouth of the well was large. Okay? So Jacob going to the land of the east means he's going up into the land of his grandfather Abraham when he lived in Haran. So he's going up to that land, and that, by the way, is where his mother was born and raised, right? Because Abraham's servant went up to get Isaac a wife. Where did Abraham's servant meet Rebekah? At the well. Are we at the same well? Probably. Okay, so here they are at a well, and Moses is going to meet his wife at a well, and Yeshua is going to meet a woman at a well who's going to be an evangelist, right? The woman at the well. So wells are important. They're meaningful here. Okay? Moving on. So Jacob says to all of the shepherds that are standing around, do you know Laban, Nahor's son? They said, we know. So he said to them, is he well? Well, he said, look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the flock. So, same land, same relatives, same well, same family, and it's going to end up being Laban again. Laban. Uncle Laban. while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with the flock that belonged to her father. She was a shepherdess. Now look at those words. While he was still speaking with them. Do you remember those words? If you go back to Eliezer, Abraham's servant, going to get a wife for Isaac, he's praying, God, if you'll make this successful. And the words are, while he was still speaking, here came Rebekah. Okay? Same idea here. Now, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob stepped forward and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. Do you think it matters that the rock was large and big? So what does that lead you to believe about Jacob? Yeah, he wasn't, we have this idea Jacob was the mama's boy. Esau was the outdoor man. But we learned last week that word doesn't mean mild. Jacob was mild. That's not what that word means. It means Jacob was good. He was a Tom. He was upright. He was a man of value and worth. Okay? Okay, so now apparently he has enough strength that he's able to move that rock. Okay, so he moves the rock. And, by the way, he kisses Rachel, which is not unusual for a greeting there. Okay, but we're going to find out something in a minute. And he weeps. He lifts up his voice and weeps. Why would he be doing that? Because he's happy. Yeah, he's glad. There are many reasons why he would be glad. One is he looked at Rachel. Okay? The other is, not long ago he had just said, God, if you're really there, be with me on my journey. Make it happen, and you will be my God. Well, he was doing it. He was making it happen. Okay? Now, when Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, that would be his nephew, he ran to meet him, and he hugged him, and he kissed him, and he brought him to his house, which is, that Middle Eastern greeting that they do. But there's something interesting about this that I just think we ought to know about. Laban, go back to when Eliezer was with Laban. What do you know about Laban? He was a little bit of a wheeler-dealer kind of guy, right? Remember, Eliezer was like, all right, I'm going to take the woman and go. And Laban was like, no, don't leave yet. Hang out another night. You got any more of those gifts? Okay. Now, those were not his words, but you read between the lines, and you can get that idea. And the more you know about his interaction with Jacob, the more it's obvious that he was like that. So, Rabbi Rashi, the medieval rabbi, whose name is Maimonides, he writes about this Laban. In this verse, he ran to greet him, thinking that Jacob was laden with money. For the servants of that household, meaning Abraham's, had come there with 10 camels fully laden. So he was like, we got another one. Yes. All right, we get to get rid of more of these women who are going to be daughters now of Laban, not sister of Laban, but, the gifts. Well, what's interesting is there are no gifts. At least they're not mentioned here, which is why Jacob is going to end up being an indentured servant for Laban. in order to give him a dowry of some kind. Okay? So Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were Hebrew word, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. The Hebrew word about her eyes is the word rakot, which means, or it might mean tender or soft or delicate. Usually in English we have weak, right? Yeah. So you get the idea that Rachel was a 10 and Leah was a 5 with glasses and something going on with her eyes, right? Isn't that how you learned it when you were growing up? Well, it doesn't have to be that way. It might be that what we're learning is Leah was beautiful and had beautiful eyes, and Rachel was beautiful and had a beautiful body and everything else. Okay? Whatever it was, Jacob was in love with Rachel. Okay? And we read, Jacob was in love with Rachel and said to Laban, "Let me serve you," here's the number again, 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Okay. Now, we, a couple weeks ago, we learned a little bit about love, and that love is not an emotion, right? It's an action. It's what you do. However, emotions are involved in love, and emotions are very involved in Hebrew. Okay? The Hebrew mind is much more allowable. Emotions are much more allowable in Hebrew than they are in the Greek mind, in the Western mind. Which is why you read over and over again in Psalms, you read David cries, David yells, David shouts, David dances, David falls down on the ground and weeps. Okay? That's Hebrew. That's the way it works. That's why there's all those different words in Hebrew for what it means to worship and praise and hallel and all of this. So when you read Jacob was in love with Rachel, you know Jacob was attracted to Rachel in a unique way. It was there. Everything was there. The emotions were there. Okay? Now we, knowing what we know, would look back and we would go, well, Jacob may have been in love with Rachel, but Jacob's going to have to learn how to really love Rachel. And there's going to be problems, aren't there, with Jacob and Rachel, and with Jacob and Leah, and with Jacob and women. Okay? His love for Rachel is going to make it, as we read on, Jacob worked for Rachel 7 years, yet in his eyes it was like a few days because of his love for her. So he's out there working, shepherd, but he knows every day I'm going to get to be with her, at least in the room with her, maybe at dinner. Okay? There was no getting together like there is nowadays, which is why his words are, give me my wife, for my days are completed, so I may go to her. You get what that means. That means be with her. I mean, here we are. I've been waiting now 7 years for this woman that I love. Okay? So, Laban was going to give Jacob a wife. All right. But not the one Jacob was thinking, not the one he was expecting. You know what happens. There's a big wedding feast, And as the evening goes on and it's dark and the hour is there for Jacob to go into his wife, and Laban gives Jacob his wife, here you go. And they go in and they spend the night together. Okay? He snuck Leah into Jacob, and Jacob did not know that it was Leah. And you're thinking, how could you not know? And I'm thinking, have you ever been to a Hebrew wedding? There's lots of wine. So, well, think about it. You have Noah. What does he do? He gets snuggered one night, and bad things happen. Okay? So now here's Jacob, and it's dark, and it says in the morning. He wakes up in the morning, and behold, there was Leah. I think that's hilarious. The way the Torah writes that. And behold, there was Leah. Okay? And I think, how is that? Are they laying down and he rolls over? You know, and he's like, honey. And she rolls back and he's like, ah! What? Wait a minute. What's going on here? All right? It's very human elements within this, right? Okay. When it was morning, behold, there was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you've done to me? Wasn't it for Rachel that I worked with you? Why have you deceived me? Now, you guys know what goes around comes around, right? So you have Jacob and his mama. And what did they do with Daddy Isaac? They deceived him, right? Even though the blessing was going to be theirs, all right, they moved in order to make it work, which is not always wrong, but the way that they went about it was deceptive, okay? So you have that, like that spirit that's flowing there, okay? So even when Abraham goes in with Sarah, his wife, and they're going into Egypt, and he's like, tell him you're my sister. Okay, don't tell him you're my wife. So otherwise, I'm dead. And it may very well be I'm dead means you're dead, or you're not going to like it because you're going to be Pharaoh's wife, whatever. But the idea was he was lying is a strong word. It was a deception, but it wasn't always wrong to do that with your enemies. Okay? But now we have this thing going on with Jacob, and now Jacob is basically getting a taste of his own medicine, right? And that means that God has a sense of humor, as does the Bible. All right. So here's Laban's words. Well, you know what? We don't do it that way here in our place, to give the younger before the firstborn. Tell you what, let's make another deal. All right? Complete the bridal week for this one. He doesn't even say her name, right? Leah. Okay, then I will also give you this other one for the work that you'll do with me for only another 7 years. Okay? Now, it means something that was that one and this one. There's no names. So what does that mean? That means Laban's view is they're my property. My daughters are my property. I own them. Yeah. It's just, here, we're going to make a deal. Right? So Laban proves to be just as good a deal maker as Jacob, but maybe not. So Jacob married both Leah and Rachel within 1 week. What do you think that house was like? Yeah, that would not. Okay, within 1 week. So he's got Leah, and he's been with Leah 1 week, and now he's got Rachel, and you know he loves Rachel. There's no indication he loves Leah. He's married to Leah, but he's married to Rachel. And I read in one of the books I was reading about this, the Torah allows polygamy. Is that right? Does it allow it or does it not allow it? More than one wife. You guys that are online, you're all going same thing as everybody else is doing. Yes, no, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, let me just give you my view. Is that all right? My view. Pat Hadley's view may be right, may not be right. I believe that it's right, but I'm allowing that it might not be right. Okay, in Torah, there are allowances. Why are there allowances? For the hardness of the hearts of the human beings to whom Torah was given. There are allowances. So when they asked Yeshua about whose wife was going to be this and whether divorce was allowed, what he did was he took them back to the beginning. He says, you know what? In Torah, Moses made an allowance for divorce. That means God made the allowance. It doesn't mean Moses did it and God was like, Moses, don't do that. No, God made the allowance, but when Yeshua uses the word Moses, he means Torah. That's what that means. In other words, there are allowances in God's law for the hardness of man's heart. Why would there be an allowance? For the so that the women were protected, basically, so that the women were not abused, basically. There are allowances. If there was a man and he was a jerk and he had a wife and he didn't like the wife because she burnt his dinner, he could either allow her to be in the house and basically abuse her, okay, or he could write her a divorce certificate and hand it to her, and then she could leave. She would be legally divorced, and then she would be allowed to marry another. Okay? So it really is God's mercy in that allowance. But then Yeshua lets the religious leaders know it wasn't that way in the beginning. In other words, that's not the ideal. That's not what God desires. What God desires is the way it was in the garden. In the garden, there was one man, one woman. They came together, and they were one flesh. That's the ideal. Okay? So all of this polygamy that is going on, God will use it. But it doesn't mean that it's his ideal. It's not his ideal. Okay, so, and when I say this, don't take it the wrong way, ladies, but men, can you imagine having like 4 wives? Can you imagine having like 900? The wisest man that ever lived, he wasn't that wise. He was wise maybe in the beginning that one day, but he let it go, all right? But I could say it the other way around. Women, can you imagine having 5 husbands? Okay? So here they are. All right, now, Jacob is not done dealing. He's not done his wheeling dealing. Okay, but he's about to do it. He devises a plan that he can get his own flock even while he's working for Laban. So he asks Laban to give him some of the off lambs, off sheep, the ones that are speckled and mottled and whatever that means. Okay, and Laban's like, sure, you can have it. Start your own little flock. That'd be all right. So he does, but he does the thing with those rods. And the flocks, his flocks just blossom. They multiply greatly. And you read in Genesis 30, verse 41, whenever these strong flocks mated, Jacob put the branches in the watering troughs before the eyes of the flocks to have them mate near to branches. But when the flocks were sickly, he did not put the branches down. So the sickly ones ended up being Laban's, and the stronger ones ended up being Jacob's. I got a deal for you, Laban. Right? Now, this might be a superstitious belief about the rods and all of that. I never heard of that anywhere else except right there in the Bible. And one guy that I heard of that did that in modern day, and he says it worked. Okay, there you go. Sure, yeah. But there's a bigger thing going on here that I really like. It's like, okay, what does that have to do with anything? What does it have to do with me? Well, here's another meaning of that, is that the lambs, the sheep, looked at the thing that had spots on it, and then they were spotted. So the idea is you and I, we become what we look at, what we behold, what we, David said about Yehovah, I set you every day before me. So if you want to be more like God, then put him there in your life every day, right? And look at him. Not literally, but yeah, you know what I mean. Okay, now, there are a lot of births that happen with Leah and Leah's nurse and Rachel's nurse, and then finally Rachel. And you go through all the reading of the names and all of that, and we're going to look at those names in a minute. We're not going to look at them. We're going to jump ahead a little bit, and then we'll go back and we'll look at the names. Okay. Now, Jacob gets to the end of the years, 7 years, and he is going to leave now. It's time to go back home. So he gets everything ready, gets his gear ready, and on the way out, and they're going to go out like by night, so Laban doesn't know, because he knows Laban is not going to let go. So he's like, all right, ladies, are you ready to leave? And apparently they're like, yeah. Well, why wouldn't they be? Because their dad was their owner, not their dad. See what I mean? Dysfunction. And Rachel grabs Laban's gods, his idols, the idols that were there. I got to go to a museum in Italy and look at idols out of Egypt, ancient Egypt, which would have been about around the time of the Exodus. And I got to look at idols. And literally, they were that big. Just little bitty idols. They look like little toys, almost. Okay? So Rachel grabs them, maybe, sticks them in a bag, and they leave. Okay? Well, Laban finds out that they've gone. And by the way, why would Rachel do that? Why would she do that? Well, you got to remember that these people they were Hebrews, and that they had crossed over, but there were elements of their other life, their idol life, that they didn't let go of all the way. Isn't that what happened with Israel and Egypt? Like, they left, but then they went back in their minds to the idols that were there. They even made an idol to worship, okay? So Rachel takes the idols. And by the way, this happens over and over again. Okay? Israel follows Yehovah in a great deliverance or whatever. And then she goes back to her idolatry. That happens a lot. Okay? Does it happen in the lives of Christians today? Of believers? Sometimes Christians today never even leave their idolatry. They don't even know they have idolatry. They just live in it and they just think, well, that was just back in that day. There were idols back in that day, but there aren't really any idols today. What time is the football game? Not that it is an idol, but it might be an idol. The last game I watched, I'd like to tell you it was like 5 years ago because I quit watching it then, but That would be a lie because I watched one about a week ago, or at least highlights. And then there were these banners that they had hanging up that were all these political banners that people were in. I was like, I don't want to watch that. I just want to watch a bunch of guys out there throwing a ball. Anyway, when Laban found out that Jacob had left, he ran him down. He chased him down in order to confront him, because to him, well, Jacob ran off with his property. And along the way, he's met by Yehovah. God meets Laban. It says, Laban, don't do anything to Jacob. If I got met by the God of the universe speaking in a way that I understood his meaning, I would not have done what Laban went ahead and did. Because Laban went ahead and ran him down and said, well, you know, I could do anything to you now that I want to do. The only reason I'm not is this God being came to me, said I need to leave you alone. But why in the world did you steal my gods, my idols? And Jacob's like, I have no idea what you're talking about here. I wouldn't do that. I didn't do that. No. And he says, yep, they're gone. And so Jacob makes this very rash, verbal, out loud, over the edge statement. Okay? He says, the one with whom you find your gods will not live. And that's exactly what happened. Isn't it? Okay? He didn't know that it was Rachel. At least in reading it, you don't get any indication that he knew that it was Rachel. Rachel was the one he loved. Remember, even though they were having problems because Rachel wasn't able to have a baby, or at least hadn't been able to have a baby, and so there was a big argument there. Because Rachel was like looking at Jacob, and she was like, give me a baby or I'm going to die. And Jacob was like, what do I look like? God to you? It's not me. God's the one that's not allowing you to have babies. Right? So, you know, in relationships, there's arguments. But Jacob says, the one with whom you find your gods will not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings and take it back for yourself. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. And then you know what happens. Laban goes over. Rachel's like sitting on a bag of them, and she says she doesn't want to get up because it's her monthly. Okay? Now, what happens is, like in the next chapter or almost, she dies. Rachel dies giving birth to her second-born. And according to Jewish tradition, she was 36 years old when she died. Did Jacob's words have any power to make something like that happen? I don't know. But it's a little weird that he kind of yells these words out and then she dies young. Okay? Okay, so we'll end, and then we'll take questions. We'll end with the names of the tribes of Israel, or the sons of Jacob. Now, this is a mini version. Okay, their names are a little bit more rich than what you're reading right here, but I just want you to get the idea. Okay, so you have Reuben and Shimon and Levi and Yehudah and Dan and Naphtali and Gad and Asher and Issachar and Zebulun and Joseph and Benjamin. Okay? Do you remember when we did Genesis 5 and we looked at the meanings of the names that are listed in the genealogy, and it was like the gospel? Well, look at the meanings of the names. Can you make a sentence out of the meanings of these names? Doesn't have to be exact, but the idea is certainly there. Okay? Like you could do it like this. Behold, a son who hears and obeys. By the way, the word Simeon is really from the word Shema, hear and obey. So behold, a son who hears and obeys, who is joined to us or joined to praise of Yahweh. He judges, okay, a struggling with, or he judges a company. They are happy or blessed is the reward that he brings, which is a home or a dwelling place that he adds and makes you the son of the right hand. You can work that out a lot of different ways, but I think if you just read those meanings, you're like, whoa. If I rearrange that a little bit, we've got like the gospel again there. So, and it isn't only there. So it's in those names in the beginning. It's in these names, and we're going to find out later. We'll find out later that it's in the sky, in the stars. The gospel is there. So, okay, yes, and in Revelation, right? Anybody have any easy questions for the night before Thanksgiving, or enlightened ideas? David. Okay, hold on. You guys here, hold on a second.
Okay. In Jasher, it says that she took the idols because she didn't want the idols to tell him where they went. And I'm not sure, but I think God spoke to Jacob as well and said, say nothing good or bad to Laban either.
In Jasher?
No, I thought that was in Genesis. No.
I don't think so.
Well, you read these things and it gets crossed over and confused.
Yeah, interesting.
But
yeah, thanks. Okay, you're next, Crystal.
So I had a question about Rachel. Like, what was she doing the night that they got married? How does she not know? What?
That's a really good question. The night that they got married and Leah was given, what in the world happened to Rachel? This is why I'm saying the family was, there's things going on. What would happen? What would you do? I mean, it had to be Laban. Laban's like, Rachel, come here. It's not going to happen. But Dad, stop it. Go to your room. Leah, you know we don't do it that way here. But you know what? I'll make a deal later, and you can go in there as well. In a week. Something like that. Was there a mother there? Oh, that's another idea. Yes, there was a mother there. If you remember when Isaac went, you had the dad was there. The dad's name was Bethuel. Is that right? Okay. But he wasn't the guy running it. Dad was kind of not there. He was there, but not there. Laban ran it. Obviously, Laban is running the roost. Okay? Laban is the dad in this instance. In the Abraham instance, Laban was not the dad, but he acted like the dad. The dad was Bethuel, but it just says he was there. Yeah. Does it mention Laban's wife? I don't think it does. Not by name. Yes. If this is good, I'm going to give you the mic.
This has to do with a little stunt that Jacob pulled with the sheep. Yeah. Okay. What he did, if you know anything about animal husbandry, okay, if you feed a lamb or a sheep that hasn't been bred yet, palm shoots, the fresh palm shoots, it's super high protein. And what will happen is a lamb or a female lamb will throw twins or triplets. Okay, so what he did was in the troughs, he puts the shoots from a palm tree, and then he binds the sheep together, which means basically as the sheep are eating the shoots, he brings the ram over and force breeds them, so that he makes sure that this one's bred and this one's bred and this one's bred. Okay, now the feeble sheep that we talk about, it's not feeble as they're weak. What it says is that their butts were clothed, and it's a trick that animal husbandry do to the lambs to prevent them from breeding. They put a diaper on them, so they weren't allowed to breed. Okay, so Jacob is breeding his sheep, and he's not feeding the good shoots to Laban's sheep, and he's also, putting a cloth on their back end to prevent them from being able to breed. So because then they go into heat, everybody wants to breed, right? And so he just prevents them. Do you see this done with dogs today? If you've ever had a female dog and she goes into heat, you put a diaper on her just to keep her from things from happening, right?
The female dog, right?
Yeah.
Today, the GMO thing. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay, anything else? All right, well, I'm going to let you guys go so you can go get your dinner ready or whatever it is that you're going to end up doing. And you guys online, hope you have a great day tomorrow. And always right to give thanks and be grateful. So we're going to do that around here Friday night as well. I'll be doing a message on Thanksgiving, and then we'll go back to Matthew next Friday night. Okay, let me pray. Father, I ask that you help our hearts and our minds to know many of the reasons we have to be grateful, of how blessed we are, even in the middle of the madness that has gone on all around us this year. Wow, have we been blessed? Have you cared for all of us? And we thank you and we love you. In Yeshua's name, amen. Amen.